Well, hello there. It's your favourite fresh air junkie, Nikki Hardy, and welcome to the Wildly Known Life podcast. This is a podcast for those of us who feel closest to God in nature and want to get outside to hang with Him there and see the awe and wonder hidden in our everyday lives, so we can stop running on autopilot, reconnect with who we really are, calm the heck down, and finally feel alive again. If we haven't met, I'm an author, retreat leader, and pilgrimage guide who loves to hang out where science, faith, and nature meet and create simple spiritual practices you can carry into the woods, your morning routine, or a regular Tuesday afternoon. Because after all, the goal isn't to escape life, it's to live the one we have more fully alive in ourselves and God. Okay, let's dive in. Let's get wild. Oh, but before we do, I've got a favor to ask of you. The algorithm, if you follow a show, will deliver you the best of that show in your feed. So when we have the best episodes of this show, you know, the best rated or the most shared, I would love for you to know. And the simplest way to know is to hit that follow button. But it's also the simplest, cheapest, easiest way to help the show and therefore support me in my work. I'd be hugely grateful if you could take a moment right now and hit the follow button on whatever platform you're listening to right now. Thanks so much. Okay, now let's dive in. You've probably heard the famous idea from an ancient Greek Stoic philosopher that you become what you give your attention to. And if it's correct, and I think it's hard to argue with, then our social media feeds might be one of the biggest predictors of who we'll be in 5 to 10 years' time from now. And to be honest, I dread to think what Instagram would predict for me, because lately I found myself sucked into an endless scrolling, doom scrolling, you know, that kind of just one more dopamine hit fueled mentality we accuse our teenagers of far more than I'd like to admit that I've been sucked into it. Social media is somewhere I need to be to do this work, but it's so easy to open Instagram, to post something, and then emerge 30 minutes later having bought a new dog toy that promises to keep Charlie happy when we've left him alone. And I've watched an alarmingly buff Norwegian granny chop wood with an axe for way longer than is necessary. And I'm thinking about how I can show up without getting sucked in. Because whether it's figuring out what tinted moisturizer won't cake in my increasingly mature skin, or listening to hilarious Brits extol the virtues of a morning run, or the endless nutritionists telling me to add flax seeds to my morning yogurt and take a 10-minute walk after dinner, when honestly, between you and me, I'm already in my pajamas. The info and the laughs rarely spend more than a few moments in my brain before being replaced by the next post. Interestingly, and not coincidentally probably, I've been feeling slightly disconnected from my own life recently. Maybe disconnected is too strong a word, but it's a sense of feeling slightly untethered, maybe a little discontented or restless or craving something. I can't actually put my finger on it. Like I said, it's hard to describe, but from what you tell me, many of you have that same sense. Not because your life is bad, it's actually pretty good, despite being a little too busy, fast moving, and at times overwhelming, which makes this all the more confusing for us. If you're like me, you are a woaka, as they call it, a woman of a certain age. The kids are out of the house, they're in the world doing their thing, you've survived some pretty rough and maybe painful seasons, and for the most part, you've built a life that looks exactly like the one you once hoped for. And yet something inside you keeps whispering, keeps tugging, keeps itching. The other day, I was looking at a beautiful sunset, and as I kind of relaxed into it, I decided to not take a photo, but to just enjoy it. But it took a gargantuan effort. And it reminded me of the question Arthur Brooks, the academic and happiness expert and author, asks in his book, The Meaning of Your Life. He's drawing on the work of psychiatrist Ian McGilchrist Brooks, who suggests that modern life, with its constant busyness, the doing, the achieving, the never-ending to-do lists, And with always one more email to send or text to respond to, a news headline to process, this overdevelops our analytical way of engaging with the world, which mainly happens in the left hemisphere of our brains. While at the same time, this lifestyle neglects the part of us that seeks beauty, meaning, relationship, and wonder, which are all connected to our right hemisphere of our brains. He even goes so far as to borrow the idea from the Matrix and ask whether we're living inside a simulation. Not an actual simulation like in the Matrix, where we're farmed out for our energy and fed simulated lives to keep us placated, but whether all this content, this information, this online scrolling, the headlines, the hurrying, the problem solving, the do, shifts us into a simulated world that's not science fiction simulated, but is a life filled with convincing substitutes. Scrolling instead of wondering, information instead of wisdom, productivity instead of purpose, and connection through screens instead of true eye-to-eye contact and belonging. And like I said, none of these things are wrong, but together they can create a life that looks full and is busy, but it's lacking in meaning, purpose, and satisfaction, and leaves us with those feelings of not feeling 100% alive and slightly disconnected. Arthur Brooks says we've become overloaded with what the left side of the brain does best. Analyzing, managing, producing, optimizing, and answering the question, what and how? What he calls complicated questions, not complex questions. Complicated questions are ones that finally will have answers when we put our minds to it. But complex questions, the ones around meaning and purpose, live in mystery, and we never actually can find a solid answer. And goodness knows we women are really good at the analyzing, the managing, the producing, the optimizing. We've spent decades figuring out how to make everything work and how to hold everything and everyone together. But somewhere along the way, many of us stopped asking the questions the right side of the brain was created for. Who am I becoming? What brings me alive? What's God inviting me into? Where do I spot beauty and kindness, awe and wonder? What actually matters to me? And that's why we've spent this summer barefoot together with our Barefoot Prayers series, where we've collectively paused from our doing, our fixing, our planning and information gathering to rest, to breathe, to be with God in his creation and remember who we're created to be. My hope is it's offered just a small clearing in the dense forest of your summer. Don't worry, I know nature doesn't magically fix us, but it does help us slow down enough to notice. Whether it's the wind whispering in our ears, the light on the lichen in the trees in the morning light, the bird song behind the sound of the never-ending summer mowers and blowers, or what we need to let go of, or who we need to forgive. Maybe this summer you've noticed a little more of God's presence. Well, every barefoot prayer has been quietly inviting us to reclaim our attention, because attention leads to awareness, and awareness leads to reconnection, and reconnection helps us recover our inner compass. And when we recover our inner compass, we stop living by everyone else's expectations and direction. We stop reacting and start responding to what I call that sacred tug within. We learn to trust ourselves again because we're learning to recognize God's voice again. And that's why I love these words from Lamentations. Because of the Lord's great love, we're not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They're new every morning. Every morning, every dawn is an invitation, not necessarily to start over or to become someone completely new, although we can, but to wake up, to pay attention once again, to listen in. Whether you've walked barefoot with me this summer or this is your first episode, if you feel that slight disconnection, or like you could be living in a simulation, or something inside as you is starting to wake up and ask questions, or you've begun asking questions you can't quite ignore anymore, I want to invite you to not let this be the end. Because here's what I know for sure. While it's great to practice paying attention and responding for 5 minutes on a podcast, more often than not, what we need is longer, quieter times to figure out our next steps, which is why I'm inviting you to 2 whole days away from the noise, away from your responsibilities, away from everyone needing something from you, and for you to come and join us at the Wildly Known Life Retreat. I've mentioned it before on the podcast, but it is a full weekend of what I'm calling sacred stillness and holy adventure. It's your chance to step away from the noise and into a space immersed in nature that's intimate, cozy, and deeply spiritual. It's actually our lake house on the shores of Lake James in the foothills of North Carolina. One moment we're going to be laughing over charcuterie and wine as the sun dips behind the lake, and the next we'll be responding to God's invitation to meet him in and through his beautiful creation. The retreat is designed to leave you feeling more rested, more rooted, and more deeply known by God, by others, and by your own soul. We're going to have fresh farm-to-table meals, snacks and refreshments. There'll be guided prayer reflections, nature invitations, and optional hikes for the adventurous. You'll get help discerning what God might be saying through his creation, and insight into the connection between science, nature, and theology to help you feel more grounded in your day-to-day. Like I said, there's going to be optional hikes, there'll be s'mores around the fire pit, weather permitting, and mountain stargazing under an almost full moon. It's going to be wonderful. This might be just what you need. Not because you need fixing, not because you need another strategy. I cannot honestly say I'm not going to be sharing one, but because sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is to step out of that simulation and get back into the life God has been inviting us to all along. Now you can find all the details and register at the early bird price and save yourself a whopping $100 over at nikkihardy.com/the Wildly Known Life Retreat. And I'll pop that link in the show notes. I hope to see you there. And the dates of the Wildly Known Life Retreat are September 18th through the 20th. And like I said, all the links, including that early bird discount of $100, is in the show notes or at nikkihardy.com/the Wildly Known Life Retreat. Okay, friends, let's close as we always do with a prayer or reflection. And today I want to simply pray a blessing over you. May the God of every new morning wake us from distraction, free us from living on autopilot, help us notice the holy within and around us, trust its voice within us, and have the courage to arise into whatever today holds. Amen. Well, thanks for spending time together on the Wildly Known Life podcast. This podcast is growing slightly, mostly by word of mouth. So as I said at the beginning, you'd be doing myself and yourself a huge favor by hitting follow. And also by leaving a review, just a sentence or two, because it helps spread the word so others can discover it. And like I said, the podcast is only one voice of this work. The deeper conversations and connections happen over on the Wildly Known Life on Substack, where I share behind the scenes reflections, practices and notes I don't say out loud here, and where you can feel a little more part of the community. You'll find the link in the show notes, and I look forward to seeing you there. Before you go, remember, don't forget to sign up for the retreat to help you get yourself out of that simulation, because sometimes the best thing we can do for ourselves is to step outside, take a deep breath, drop our shoulders and ask what our wildly wonderful God has to say, because that's where coming alive in our life and faith begins and living wildly known follows. All right, bye for now. See you soon.